Number 77 of the ratio tells us to dream. But what about our dream and God's dream, and maybe dreaming would just get us into trouble? And so I'd like to talk about that, and I'd like to do it, explain my experience in Cozumel, my first apostolic practices, and reflecting on that, my dream, God's dream, my dream versus God's dream. Is that how it works? And also, I'd like to do that because I think there's three elements here. I'll go through it that will help us think about this. And first of all is the relationship with Him, which is Christ. The relationship with myself, getting to know myself. And the third one would be the relationship with us, with our companions, but also with the Legion. And I was there in Rome. It was late June 1980. I had finished my second year of philosophy. Back then, we normally went out on apostolic practices or internship to go out on work in the field after second year philosophy. And there was one, I was ready to go anywhere. Anywhere. Wasn't a problem. I liked this idea of seeing the world. But there was one place I did not want to go to. And it had been in my mind for about a year, the Yucatan. I'm not really sure why. You know, we get these ideas in our heads and we're not really sure why. I suppose I just thought in mosquitoes and iguanas and jungle and a culture very, very different than my own. I wanted to go maybe somewhere that would be a little more familiar. So anyway, we're outside, we're eating, the exams are over, that relief when the exams are over, and we're having dinner. Beautiful evening when Father arrives with the letters. Back then it was a letters, a series of 20, 30, 40 letters. And then you just got your letter, your destination it was called. So I was a little further down, I couldn't quite hear it, so they were calling different brothers, people were cheering, they would open the letter, the whole thing, great excitement. And then what happened was I vaguely heard my name. Again, we're further down and everybody's looking at me. And then they open the envelope and guess where I'm going. I don't have to tell you, right? The Yucatan. I guarantee you, I had told nobody. I'm positive of that because I began to think, did I tell some brother who told somebody? No. But there I was going straight to the Yucatan. And I remember that night I was so shocked. It's hard to explain the feeling, right? It's shock. And I was lying there in bed and I thought, what were the chances? I told nobody, I was sure. So what were the chances of me going to the one place that I had decided in my mind that I didn't want to go to? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Try to do the calculation yourself. I was really upset. And then I thought to myself, I can't remember exactly what happened. I mean, you're remembering back, but it was vivid. It was a moment I won't forget. I almost my fist at God and said, okay, you did this. I will go, and then I'll do my 3 years there, and I'll come back as quickly as I can. 3 years as quickly as I can, right? Didn't make a lot of sense. But I think that's the first thing. I think the first thing is that getting to know God. Getting to know God. Because the next morning when I woke up, the decision was made. It was a great grace God gave me at that moment, right? Make the decision, whatever, a little bit of a crisis situation, make the decision. And so the Wimbledon was on at that time, maybe a few days later, the Wimbledon was playing, and we're watching the Wimbledon, and next thing, there is a commercial with an iguana. And everybody started laughing at me because I think I'd mentioned something about iguanas. I didn't even know what an iguana was, right? For me, it looked like just a huge animal. It wasn't. And they were all laughing at me. I don't think they had any idea what I was suffering. But again, the decision was made. We're moving forward. Okay, iguanas and all. So then, of course, what nobody told me, I didn't understand the geography. I didn't really understand the Yucatan. But it turned out that I was going to Cozumel, and no one had told me how beautiful Cozumel was. It's actually one of those beautiful places on earth. It's got a little problem with heat. It's very hot, but it is a beautiful place. So I arrived there, and that was, wow. Wow. Again, the decision was made. Because I think with Christ, when we realize he wants something, you got to make the decision. If the decision drags on, it can be a bad situation. It can be a bad situation. I'm not saying discerning. So anyway, I got there, and the person's place I was taking was David Murray. David Murray had been a novice when I was in the youth club, youth program. There was a youth program in the seminary in Dublin. I went there in 1972. He's the novice, and they're running this club. Of course, he applied all his imagination to the club. It was very impressive. He would make slideshows for us. He had movie forums. You know, when you talk about movie, you would never see anything like this. I was very impressed by him. Well, it turned out, now I'm going to Cozumel. He has been working he had worked for 3 years in Cozumel, and I'm going to take his place. And no matter where you go, no matter where on earth you ended up going, when you get there, there's not everything you thought was going to be there. And he said I was complaining about something. I said, we don't have this, or we don't have that. And he said to me a phrase that stuck in my mind. He said, don't complain about what you don't have. Work with what you have. That phrase, I think, helped shape me, because that's what happens in, I think, internship. There's moments that shape you. Work with what you got. It brought again great peace. And I think that's part of the relationship with God. As we said, I have 3 points. The first point, your relationship with God, work with what you got. Again, it's accepting. Okay, I don't have this. What do we have? What can we work with? Now I'll move to the second point, which is, again, we're in the dream. And I think you'll see it coming together at the end about the dream. We dream, God dreams. How's this going to work? But for it to work, I think the second point is we have to get to know ourselves, the relationship with myself. And we only, in story, this is the rules of story and how a story works. The protagonist of a story only gets to know themselves under pressure. It's only under pressure you get to know yourself. It's only during the novitiate, in that moment when you're totally fed up, totally fed up, you get to know yourself. You don't know. The protagonist in a movie doesn't know. He doesn't even know himself. He doesn't know how he's going to react. He only finds who he really is under pressure. And so the pressure began. First of all, David Murray was a superstar. And one of the things, for example, he was running there in Cozumel. Cozumel was at that time about 30,000 people. It was a tourist resort. Not as big as Cancun. Cancun was beginning. It was really only beginning. It was large. I think Cancun, if I'm not mistaken, began in around 1973. It had 3 houses in Cancun in 1973. Suddenly they decided to turn it into a resort, and so it's growing. Cozumel had been there before that. It's a much smaller area. A lot of hotels, a lot of resorts, very famous for its diving. It's famous diving. Beautiful diving, beautiful, extraordinary water. Diving was the great attraction there. Very nice beaches. So David Murray on that island, there was a radio probably everywhere, but at that time in Mexico, there was a whole string of local radios. So there was a local radio station that went 24 hours a day. And David Murray and the priest that I would work with, the pastor, Father Javier Orozco, was a man of great initiative. The two of them started a radio program, a weekly radio program. Basically, they would just record it in our house, and then David Murray would run down with a cassette, give it to them, and they would play it on the radio. And the idea was that I would inherit that radio program. But at one stage I said to David, I just don't have the talent to do this. This is going to take a lot of time to learn. And he was really good. And he told me years later, he said, thanks for being clear. I said, I don't think in a month before you go, there's any way I can keep this going. Again, a little bit of pressure. Under pressure, nobody was pressuring me, but at the same time, there was pressure. And probably did the right thing in saying, it's too much, I can't. I'll get back to that later, in how sometimes when experiences like that are not all bad. The other thing David Murray had is he had a club that had 150 kids. 150 kids in Cozumel. And he would have it on Saturday. And one of the ways he attracted the kids was the video cameras had just come out. The Sony video camera. I mean, they had been out for a year or two. And he would make movies of the kids. Well, they would come in droves to his event. And they were good and well made and funny and stories. And he had learned all that when he was young, which is what we had benefit from in the club when I was there. And he was a novice and he was in charge. Back then in the 70s, it wasn't video, it was sound. So you'd mix sound and mix songs. And that was how he sort of got into everything. And then when the video camera came along, he realized that he could use the sound and the songs and everything and combine it with images. And this stuff was extraordinary. I think you get the picture, right? This is going from bad to worse. And so, anyway, to explain in very simple terms, when he left, the day he left, the next Saturday when we had the club, I had 5 kids. And could never grow it more than 5 kids. I think you get the picture, right? The idea of the superstar that was going to arrive was, let me say, dead. And Father Javier really wanted to get that club back up again. And so I really tried. I tried everything. And let's just say it wasn't working. But I had, again, I think in moments like that, under pressure, you go deep inside yourself and try and, well, you can give up, of course. But that's not an option in life. You know, if a protagonist in a movie gives up, at any point you're in the movie, I mean, for long, there's no movie. Movie ends. There's no movie. The protagonist can get discouraged, but he can't give up. Ever. And so from the experience I'd had in club, we call it Rocklands, back in Dublin when I was a kid, and David Murray was sort of in charge of it. He wasn't the only one. We had different activities, and then that organization we call ECYD, which gives us spiritual formation. I remember that, well, you could take those 4 or 5 kids, because they were obviously motivated. If they kept coming, they were motivated, right? There were no movies or anything anymore, and really form them, really give them a lot of great formation. And I told them, this is what I want to do. They said, yeah, we'd like that. That's what we like. We'll come. And so I think it was every Saturday or whatever, maybe every Thursday, something like that. We'd have an hour meeting, and basically it was a class. It was a formation class on what the Catholic faith was, what our ECYD was. Well, at the end of that year, I decided to bring those. I think I remember 4 or 5. I remember 4. I brought 4 of those kids to Mexico City, where they were having a big youth convention. And what happened was, I can't remember how many kids there were at this gathering. Kids from Mexico City, kids from our schools there. But I remember there was about 6 teams. They divided everybody in 6 teams. And one of our kids was on the different teams. 3 of the kids ended up being team leader of those teams. And the 4th was not the team leader, but it was the intellectual leader. Drove all the ideas. And so I'm standing looking at that, really confused. I couldn't believe it. I had sort of done it because I had no other option. But it was a real lesson that work with what you got. David Murray's principle. Don't complain about what you don't have. Don't complain about what you don't have. And also, again, I'm talking about confusion because I want to get back to that in a second. I want to give another example, then I'll try and go back to that. So then the next year, Father Javier said to me, because there was a school there, and they had started the school, I think it was a year old. David Murray had started it with Father Javier. And it wasn't exactly a parish school, but it was sort of. It was independent from the parishes, but it was a school. It was a serious little school, grade school. And David Murray had started with Father Javier. David Murray had now gone back to Rome. And Father Javier, on my second year, said, well, I'd like you to work in the school. And I said, fine, sure, whatever, good. I've been hearing a lot about it, so I started working in the school. Father Javier is the director, and I was sort of his assistant, but I was there all the time. And basically, my job was to make it happen. And one of the first experiences I had there was trying to show that I was competent. I arrived to the school and I make a list of things that need fixing. Little things, right? The squeaky door, whatever. I made a list of 20 things. And I go to the secretary there. We have two very good secretaries. And I said to her, where can I get somebody to come and fix these things? They go, brother, a lot of construction going on right now on the island in hotels. Nobody is going to want to come here and fix these little things. I go, you don't worry. You just tell me where their workshop is and I'll go and convince them. Okay, down the road, take a right. So I went down and into this carpenter shop. It was amazing what they were making. They were making really beautiful things for the hotels. So I go up to him my little list and I said, could you send somebody to the school? We have some things here we'd like to fix. And he looks at the list and he goes, sure, Father. Of course I will. Mañana. Really? I got it. At what time? At 11 a.m. Thank you so much. I went back and I told everybody, and I knew they were laughing, but I couldn't figure out what they were laughing at. Well, mañana in Mexico means never. But I hadn't grasped the meaning of the word, right? So they were laughing, and I knew, oh, I started on the wrong foot. What am I going to do? I thought, God, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the Irish thing. So I went 30 straight days, every single day, as if I hadn't gone the day before. I'm from the school down the road. Here's my list of 20 things. Would you come fix them? Sure, Father. When? Mañana. What time? A las 11. I did it for 1 month straight. So finally one day I go, I'm going, okay? I said, what time? Mañana. At what time? 11. I'll see you there. Well, he came, fixed everything. I remember in my office, I sat there, I thought, I will never do that again. But still, I was starting to discover something inside me, right, where you could go deep inside you and find solutions. And so there was a lot of other things going on, came up with ideas to help. It turned out to be very good for me because the school was small and it was whatever we made it, basically. And but at the same time, and so I was very good at coming up with new things and things that really worked and really helped. And I saw that. But there was something going on inside me that I could not understand. As I said, that get to know God and get to know yourself. And you really only get to know yourself under pressure. And the new pressure that was building was that, although I was very good at setting up ideas and systems and being very creative, and it really helped the school because we had to promote it. There was a second school on the island, so we really had to promote it. Was that something was going wrong. And I only discovered years later what it was I was not a good manager. I could work on projects and really make them work and really get them to help, but I was not good at the day-to-day details, which a manager has to be, supervisor, manager. And of course, I think we all imagine ourselves being the person in charge, and something's wrong. Something's really wrong. Now, the school worked, and it worked well. And I think we did very well in those 2 years when I was there. But still, things were wearing me out. I didn't know what it was. And of course, I would only discover years later what it was, because then that would affect me in the next apostolate and the following apostolate. Till it was only about 10 years ago, I realized when I did the 16 personality system, that's what really helped me. But the one that's got an interpretation that helps me a lot is basically how I see the world. It's how each personality sees the world. It's not behaviors. A lot of them are behaviors, but this one's different. This one goes, okay, how do I see the world? And I began to realize little by little that my strength was I could see possibilities. I could just see possibilities. And got confused because those around me couldn't see it. I would actually get very confused. Again, that was part of the confusion. It was so obvious. If we do A, B, C, and D, here's what we get, right? And then you did it A, B, C, D, and we got there, right? And then the next time you said, they were looking at you again like, huh? Well, if we did it the last time, maybe we might get it this time, right? But I couldn't understand it. Then to realize that the type of personality, the defect is that when it comes to details, they're not good at details. They have big picture, but not details. Now, it's not that I couldn't, but it would take a lot of energy, an awful lot of energy. Now, when I figured that out with the help of somebody about 10 years ago, that brought a lot of peace to my life. So then what that means, and I had sort of figured it out intuitively, but I didn't really understand it, is then I have to look for somebody and work with somebody who's a good manager. The key is to look for the person that's the opposite, or a detailed orientated person. Father Owen Kearns is super detailed. And we might spend 2 weeks on the words that go in a sentence, right? Father Miguel, I couldn't do his job, but I would need somebody like Father Miguel. So you begin to sort all that stuff out. Know yourself. We're talking about dreaming. What are you going to dream? What are you going to dream about? It's not just imagining ourselves as, I don't know. It's dream. It's realistic dream. It's the dream we were made for. What did God make us for? We'll also get to know ourselves, because by getting to know ourselves, we'll know a little bit about that. And so it was the beginning. It was the beginning of a lot of questions I really didn't have answered. On the one hand, things went a lot faster than I was better. I was good at certain things I didn't fully realize I was good at. And then we had this other little thing that was really very, very confusing. And later on we'd figure it out, and later on it would be just a great blessing. So if we're going to dream, okay, we have to know God, what He wants. We have to know ourselves. Or it's not a dream. It's, what would you call it? It's more like an image or something, an idea that attracts me. And a dream is not exactly something that attracts me. Think about the great dreamers of the world. They had a dream about something that was realistic, about something that they could really do. And then the third thing I'd like to move on to, and that is that in our dream, it has to be, we have to get to know us. And us means a little bit more than, it means a little bit more than just, oh, my community or the brothers I'm with. I mean in a little broader terms. It does mean that. It definitely means that. It definitely means that. But it also means the Legion, the organization, the church, the good of the church. See, it's a broader thing. And the reason why this is extremely important, because Christ, as we saw in Quest for the Core, He doesn't just call me. He calls me to be with others. Now, obviously, more stress is coming. More stress is coming. Because not now do I just have to, God and me, we'll work this thing out, right? But now it's okay. And I think the best way for me to express it is, and I became sort of aware of it in those apostolic practices, in that internship, was we can focus our energies in many different areas. Even in the same apostolate. Let's say I'm given this job, right? Work in the school. Okay, but there's a lot of different angles I can work the school. Even if you're in charge of school or whatever, or you're the person on the ground, you can still come from many different angles. But you have to search for the angle that is really going to help the us. And I became very much aware, again, these are all little steps, but it sounds a little silly, but we're in the middle of the war, right? It takes time that, okay, if I could really help the school grow, then this would really help the work we were doing in Cozumel. So to focus my energy on keeping the school running, as I said, I was good in one sense, very good, but I was not good really in the detailed management. But we worked it out. There was Brother Blanco worked with me. I think he's back in Cozumel, Father Blanco now, and he was much more detailed, and he'd take care of the details, and we'd cover each other's back, right, in a very good sense. But the us. So I think I think what's important here is you say, okay, what's my dream? Well, no, that's not going to work. It's what's the dream that God's calling me to that could really benefit those around me. And so, again, one of the things I realized that the school needed was it wasn't really breaking even at that time financially, was we needed to grow. So I thought, okay, let me focus a little bit on this. And back then, the Father David Daly was Father Jorge Cortés. He would come around twice a year, visit us, like Father David does. And he was really good. He was really kind. He was really looked out for the good of the brothers and the fathers. And he had been a director of a school in Mexico, where we had the big schools. This was a small school, maybe 200 kids, maybe less. And I don't think we were breaking even at that time. And so we needed to. And I said to him, what could I do? So I think when you start saying, okay, what's the dream for those around me, then it gives you the questions to ask. That was the other thing I realized. It gives you the questions. Otherwise, you don't have the questions to ask people. If it's all about me, yeah, sure, I can talk about my dream and what I want. And sure, they'll be my questions. How do I get what I want? But I realized, wow, if we can get the school to grow, this would take pressure off Father Javier Orozco, the pastor. It would stabilize the school. It would give us, et cetera, all the things. I could just see it, the possibilities. I could see it. And we really the school was good. The school was very good. We knew when kids would go somewhere else that they would do very well. They're really to go to a high school you often went to Mexico City or you went to Mérida de Yucatan. You went out. So we knew from the reports that the kids were doing well. So Father Jorge Cortés comes on one of his visits. I said, Father, how do I make the school grow? He said, I'll give you two things you can do. First of all, get computers. And second of all, have a great Christmas play. Great Christmas play, he said. And I had a clue what a computer was, and nobody could answer my question what a computer was. So what does a computer actually do? Nobody could answer the question. Because it was 83, so they were coming out, but they weren't that popular yet. And they really hadn't made any software programs. Software programs were a little bit later, so they weren't terribly useful. They were a little bit, right? You could get a programmer and spend tons of money. Software packages will be the breakthrough, and that would come later. And I thought, Christmas play. He said, I am telling you, that will make your school grow. Okay, how do I do a Christmas play? And he meant a production. In Mexico, what do they call them? The pastorela. But he said, it's got to be good. And so I thought, I'd like to do that. Okay, let's have a shot at it. I don't fully understand, but let's have a shot at this thing. About 5 days later, this man walks in and says, I'm an actor from Mexico City. And I'm here running a hotel. And I'd love to help you guys do a show. I said, you're kidding. He goes, no. I won't charge anything. I said, I won't charge anything. I got a full-time job, but I think I could really do something really good. Okay. That's another strange thing you learn on the apostolate, that if you go for something, God sends people. It's the story in a movie. It's called The Mentor, when the hero decides to go to whatever, destroy the ring or whatever they have to do, mentors show up along the way. It's been my experience. You decide to go for it, people show up. That made absolutely no sense. I think it was about 5 days later. So anyway, okay, what do we have to do? He said, well, the first thing we have to do is we got to write whatever the thing is. So he laid the whole thing out. And he said to me that evening, he said, when I finish, now I said to him, people, I've noticed, because of the heat, they just don't get excited, these things. Now, probably the reason is we weren't able to get them excited, right? He said, when I finish, they'll be on their chairs cheering. Okay, all right. So first of all, he starts interviewing all the kids and starts figuring out, okay, here, I think we got 2 stars right here, 2 young kids, these kids. And these 2 kids will be the main thing. They're really good. I think they've got what it takes. So then he wrote sort of the play, how it was going to work, singing, the whole thing, right? And then he called, he really knew what he was doing. He told the kids, okay, costumes. I want costumes, no paper. I said, I don't want any paper. No, the costume has to be cloth. And there in Mexico, in Cozumel, they had people who sewed beautiful things. It was beautiful. I mean, it was an island. It was a hotel area. They had a lot of skilled people. So people go out. They were very excited about doing the show or doing this pastorella, the Christmas play, and they all got the things. But one mother shows up with the kid with paper. And I'm there. I'm in the school. He's coming in, interviewing everybody. Yeah, that's fine. You're great. Go. Yeah, fine. Good. This one is this. I give instructions. You didn't follow them, so your kid's out of the play. Out. You're out. Do you understand what I just said? No, but please, I gave clear instructions. Here they were in writing. You show up and you didn't do the costume right. So your son or daughter is out. I'm watching this thing, holding my breath, right? Please, is there anything I can do? You got 24 hours. 24 hours to come back with the costume the way I asked for it. Well, that seamstress was up all night working, let me tell you, right? But she was back at 4 p.m. with the costume perfect. And all I can tell you is when the show went on, because there was a decent place in Cozumel where the cruisers would come in and they would do a little play. So there was a very good place there. We rented it out and got it up and everything. And all I can tell you, when they finished, the parents were out of their minds. Half of them were on the chairs cheering, right? And yet it helped us, and really helped the school grow, because like anything, right? And so I think it's the third thing is we can focus our energy any way we want. It's up to us. Even within the same apostolate, the approach. What approach are we going to take? We decide. The Spirit decides. Well, not really. Yeah, he can tell you what he wants, but in the end, to get what he asked you to do, what's your approach going to be? You want to get an angle. You want to get it down. And yeah, the school grew. And then, yes, I could see the positive effect it was having on Father Javier. He wasn't worried anymore. We had enough students, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think I'd just like to end saying the following, and that is, because we started out saying God's dream, our dream, how's that going to work? I think if we take into account those 3 things, what God wants, better get to know God. Know what God wants. God isn't a person that has it all figured out in a sense we're puppets on a string. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. So know God. There are moments he'll ask us to do things, and there are moments, there's certain things he doesn't want us to do. But I think it's a story. I think we're working together with God on a story. It's adjusting and moving all the time. But know what God wants, to know what God is, to know who God is and what he wants. I think the second thing is know our talents, our strengths and our weaknesses. And our weaknesses, we need to work on our weaknesses. That's why there's no problem that we end up being sent to a place we don't want to go. And there's no problem we end up with a job we don't want. There actually is no problem. First of all, how do you know what you want? And how do you know where you don't want to go? You don't. Nobody knows. But there's no problem, because that's how our strengths and our weaknesses come out under pressure. To get to know ourselves and know, okay, little by little, get to know, okay, I'm really good at this. I can do it almost effortlessly. This area, I can do it, but it will take a lot of energy, or I need to find somebody that can help me with that area. And then the third thing, and I would express it this way, is what's the good of whatever, the community, the Legion? It's for the good of us, and I mean the church. When I say us, I mean the church. It was obviously good for the church that that Catholic school in Cozumel was thriving. It was good. It was obviously good. If the dream's all about me and what I want, then the dream will turn into a nightmare very quickly. Very quick. Maybe you've seen it happen to others. And think about it, it's the same with a man that gets married. He has to take into account what God wants. If he tries to do it his way, it's not going to go, right? He has to take into account what his talents are. He's got to feed the family, so he's got to find out what his talents are pretty quick. The way you feed a family is you find out, what am I good at? And then the third thing, the good of the family. He's got to be thinking the good of the family. It's the broader than just the family. It's the family, it's the relatives, it's the country, right? It's a little broader than just the family, but he's got to be thinking of the family. If a man gets married and he's thinking about his dream, you know, a 5-year-old can tell you that's going to end. That's going to turn into an unbelievable nightmare that can get worse and worse. But it works the other way. If we work the 3 to the best of our ability, my experience has been, and I really believe this, God's dream and our dream is the same, but in a slightly different way. That God will give us what we dreamt about, but a lot more. I'll repeat that again, it's very important. God's dream and our dream will be the same, but not in a way where I give in to him or whatever, right? No, that's not exactly what's going to happen. It's the other way round. We have something we dream about. And we roll the dice and we do what we have to do. The end will be that we got everything we asked for. At the end of our life, we'll go, I got it all. But I did not get it in the way I thought I was going to get it. I didn't get it in the timing, in my timing, but what I got, every one of the issues, every one of the elements, I got it much better than what I myself had dreamt about.